On this episode of Infinity Sports, we're actually going to be talking some soccer. We're going to be talking baseball again. That's 3 shows in a row. And we're going to be talking some basketball and football coming right up after the intro, which I don't have prepared. After the intro.
A spectacular move by Michael Jordan. Drives one out to deep left field. This one's got a chance to get out of here. Gone! 3-run Jimmy Jack first big league home run for Mike Trout. Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler. And an 81-point game, 55 in the second half. Ladies and gentlemen, you have witnessed the second greatest scoring performance in NBA history.
What is going on, everybody? I'm Wayne P, joined as always by Sully.
Yo, what's poppin'?
And the return of Nick P. What's going on?
What's up, everybody? All my haters, John Morant, went off last night.
Oh, man.
My God.
First time Zion Williams has been going off every game since you've been gone.
Yeah, but it's all right because Ja's been in the playoff hunt.
I mean, Ja's, is it wild that Ja's Morant's team has a better record when he scores less than 14 points?
Yeah, I mean, I don't. It is weird. I mean, there's a tough defensive side, honestly. Like they play good defensive basketball.
I did see on one of our YouTube videos the one where you were crapping all over Zion, which you probably think which one, but somebody did say this aged well.
Oh yeah, I didn't check in on it. I mean, it definitely aged well because Ja's in the postseason. Ja's in the postseason, baby. Okay, postseason Ja.
As long as he scores under 14 points, they should be good.
We are kicking things off with some soccer because the big news in sports, I think, for the past week has been this European Super League because they came out and said, all right, 2023-24, we're coming out with it. We've got the British Premier League, we've got the Bundesliga, we've got La Liga, we've got League One, and everybody was in it. Serie A was all in on it. And now we've had all 6 of the English teams bow out. I didn't understand what this was, so you guys can probably explain it to me more. Like, I thought it was like what I do when I play FIFA in my video game, which is where I take one league and I put all the best teams in one league and we play like a season. But it's not. It's like a tournament, right?
Yeah, I mean, essentially when it bears down to it, like we were speaking beforehand, it's just a money grab from these owners. So it's essentially the Champions League in a league where it's closed out. But the issue is that's not what European sports is about. That's not what it was founded on. You know what I mean? And honestly, what makes the Champions League great is, the ability for teams to make it that usually don't. I don't know. Like Nick will say, this was driven by American owners and the ownership stakes in European football. And, the European heads kind of have come out and said, hey, look, you do this, you're not going to be able to play in the World Cup. You're not going to be able to play in Champions League and obviously, and things like that. So that kind of, I think, scared some players, and since then teams have backed out.
Yeah, to your point, I mean, that kind of plays into, Wayne, what you're taking. I don't think it initially ended – I think the intent was to have it be like this like midweek tournament amongst like the upper echelon of football clubs across Europe. But when FIFA and UEFA stepped in, the governing bodies, and said, if you guys go through with this, you're out of the Champions League, you're out of your domestic competitions, you're out of the World Cup, like all this sort of stuff. Once they put that line in the sand, it became – you saw some of the stubbornness for some of the ownership groups. Unfortunately, Liverpool was spearheading – part of the spearheading for this whole thing. You saw the stubbornness turn into – well, we're just going to go through with it anyway, and we'll just do the Super League and get all the marketing revenue and everything like that. Because to Sully's point, at the end of the day, the American ownership groups are not used to having a governing body take the bulk of the revenue on anything. And that's exactly what you have in world football, and they don't like it. So they tried to do something about it. It was a money grab.
Well, that's what I was thinking, is that kind of like the Olympics is as crooked a sport as there is, all the glad handing that goes on behind the scenes. The NCAA is as crooked as they come. I feel like FIFA and UEFA, they're just as crooked as these things. So I wasn't sure if it was a good thing that these clubs were like, hey, F you, kind of like if for whatever reason Duke was like, F you NCAA, we're going to do our own thing. Or if it was a bad thing for soccer. I don't know.
I mean, it depends on – I think for the sport, it's tough because I think it was good in some circles, right? Like the TV watchability factor, like the marketability of it made sense, right? But it was completely, I mean, you're talking about like over a century or centuries of history in a club like Liverpool's case, Manchester United, like those clubs have been around for centuries, playing in those domestic leagues for centuries. It's like, you're denigrating all of that history by doing something like this, by isolating those clubs from really what their history is built on.
Yeah, I think the difference too with like Duke stepping away and saying, well, we'll do our own thing is like, let's say then they said, well, if you do that, you can never go play in the NBA.
Right.
And that's essentially what they're saying to these soccer players. It's like, okay, go ahead, step away, start your own thing. You can never play in the biggest leagues again. You can never play for the most prestigious titles again. You can never do these things again. You can win the Super League title, go ahead. But you're never going to win a World Cup. You're never going to win a Champions League. You're never going to win a domestic title again because we won't allow you to play. And so that's where I think it differs from like the American side of it, where you say Duke steps away. Well, then they just step away, so forth, and then they go to the NBA. Well, in this case, they wouldn't allow them to the NBA. They would have to stay and play their own league or something like that.
It was interesting. It was interesting too to me. Sorry, Wayne. It was interesting too because Paris Saint-Germain, which is right now, like one of the wealthiest clubs in the world, they were not a participant. And that was surprising to me. But when I read as to why they weren't a participant, it wasn't surprising any longer. And that's because they're owned by Saudi Arab oil money. I mean, PSG that club's entirely run by the Saudi royal family. It's why they can buy the best players in the world, Neymar, Mbappe, all those guys. And they have direct revenues tied to sponsorship deals with UEFA and FIFA. So they weren't going to tread on that, knowing that FIFA and UEFA, especially the Champions League, is a cash cow marketing wise for them. I mean, their businesses. Yeah. So it was just fascinating to see the posturing by different clubs and sort of like the circumstances, because they weren't all the same. Like I laughed with a friend. I was like, why is Tottenham a part of the Super League?
Exactly.
What the hell have they ever accomplished?
Yeah.
Like, why would they be in the Super League? But that's another topic. It was just interesting. That was an interesting thing for me.
So if I understand correctly, what it was is, I know like the UEFA Champions League is basically like, all right, I play for Manchester United, I play in my Premier League season, and then like during the season I might take a week where we go play in a UEFA qualifier or a UEFA playoff game, and then we're back to our regular Premier League season. It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
So that's what this was. This was like competing with UEFA as another tournament, right?
Yeah.
It would have essentially canceled out the Champions League, which is what I think the big issue is. Yeah. Is like, so these teams would theoretically all be getting together anyway, because the top, 4, depending on the size of your league and things like that, the top teams in your league go on to the Champions League. Now, most of the time it's, United, it's, Liverpool, it's Man City, it's Chelsea, it's all these teams, Borussia Dortmund and Bayern and whatever it may be. But in some cases you get teams that surprise and finish in the top. Leicester City, years ago. And that's, kind of what UEFA thrives on and loves about it. And this effectively canceled that out. So I think, that kind of was another reason that they were so forceful against this, was you're not taking away our tournament. You're not taking away, like Nick said, such our massive cash cow that Champions League is. So we'll just kind of effectively dead that.
And Wayne, you know what's funny too is part of Liverpool's ownership group, I don't know if you were aware of this, is LeBron James. He just bought an even greater stake into Liverpool recently. And I just thought that was so funny, because doesn't a Super League sound like such a thing that LeBron would do?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, doesn't that sound like something that's right up his alley? And I was saying to a buddy of mine, I was like, look, like UEFA or these owners got it all wrong. You need a Super League in the NBA. Take like the top 6 markets where all these guys are just bandwagoning off each other and they're all just being best friends and playing against each other and disarming and giving dabs before games. Let that go be a Super League in the NBA. And then we'll have like the Milwaukee Bucks against the Portland Trailblazers in the finals, something everybody wants to watch, instead of these like all-star teams battling out in the biggest markets like the NBA's become.
I'd rather watch the Lakers Nets, truthfully.
Not me.
But
not me. I'll watch Dame go against Giannis. That's real basketball.
Well, so I guess my last question about it was then, we've got the UEFA Champions League, we've got the Carabao Cup, right? We've got the Emirates Cup, right? So
the FA Cup.
Those are all like domestically.
Yeah. So I was saying, why not just have an extra tournament? I mean, we can still have the UEFA League, but we'll also have this.
Well, because you wouldn't, because it wasn't involved in UEFA and FIFA. They weren't a part of it.
They weren't a part of it. It was to grab the money. It was to grab total revenue from the club.
All the leagues came together and said, we're doing this without UEFA, without FIFA, and we're doing it on our own. And FIFA said, no, you're not. Right. Or you can if you want to, but you're not playing then in the Champions League. You're not playing in the World Cup, and you're not even playing in your own domestic league at that. So, have fun. There were a lot of fun memes where, who was it, posted that they were Champions League winners now because, the rest of the teams that were in effectively joined the Super League. And, teams are posting, we won the domestic league, like I think it was Everton or something because, they'd now be vaulted to first or something like that. And these teams and clubs realize, well, damn, I don't know if the revenue offset is actually worth it once we lose all these other teams or all these other games.
Yeah, so I think the fan backlash pushed a lot of these English clubs away. I mean, even Liverpool supporters. It's disgraceful in my opinion, both sides, because it was disgraceful to see Liverpool's ownership group FSG perpetuate this whole thing just for a money grab. Because, quite frankly, in my opinion, they're cheap billionaires if you could ever be such a thing. But then you also, pretty cheap. But then you have the supporters groups as well who are like, oh well, if this happens, I'm not going to support the club. It's like, listen, I don't give a shit if they're playing Sunday co-ed league. I'm always going to support. You know what I mean? I'm always going to support Liverpool. I don't care where they're at. So if that's your narrative, sayonara. Go support another club. Like, you're just showing your true colors. So it was interesting, to see the amount of uproar by the fans and the supporters, and just how influential that is in this whole process was actually kind of empowering, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, because I think if the New England Patriots joined the XFL, I'd be watching a lot of XFL games where the Patriots are playing.
Yeah. As you should.
Right. Okay, so that leads us into basketball. And the first basketball topic I really wanted to get into was Steph Curry has been on fire. Over the last 2 weeks, he's averaging 42 points per game or something like that. He had 50 in that run. He had 49, I think, last night. He did surpass Wilt Chamberlain as the all-time leading scorer in Golden State history. Not Golden State, but Warriors history. And
twice as many games.
Yeah, twice as many games. That's the point I wanted to get into, because I did see all over social media these debates like, hey, look here, Steph Curry is now the all-time leading scorer for the Warriors. He's better than Wilt Chamberlain. And I'm like, well, it took him, like I said, 750 games as opposed to Wilt's 429. And over that span, Wilt averaged 42 points per game for 5 years, whereas Curry's been averaging 23 points per game. So it's like, let's not rush to call Steph better than Wilt.
I mean, most people that are going to say they're Steph better than Wilt are, I'm assuming, going to be under the age of 30. Or most likely even younger than that. I don't think, for one, it's really tough to compare those two players because obviously they do two completely different things. I do not think Steph Curry is a top, 5 player, top 3 player, and I do think Wilt is, but I do think Steph Curry is the best point guard of all time. So, I'll give him that. And truthfully, I mean, if he continues kind of this run, I think it's going to be hard for voters not to vote him as the MVP. I know, that his team's kind of terrible. Not kind of terrible. They're pretty terrible. And they're, not likely going to make the playoffs. And, truthfully, up until, these last run, he wasn't really doing anything special. But, I mean, the hype he has and the love he has around the league, and with no other real, likable star, running away with it right now, I think the league would love to see Steph Curry win the MVP.
Yeah, I like Steph Curry. I've always liked him. I think his shooting ability is probably unmatched in history. I don't know that I'd go as far as – it's funny you said best point guard, and I thought immediately, well, I'd take Magic Johnson over Steph Curry still to this day. I mean, I realize like he's kind of a point forward, right? But he was still a point guard.
No, and it's two completely different games, but I agree. I mean, that's the other one. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even for me, it's like I take a guy like I mentioned this to Wayne, I think earlier this week, but I love Allen Iverson. I'd still take a guy like Allen Iverson. I know he didn't win a ring, but I'd still take AI over Steph Curry. It's just my thing with Curry is he's the personification of what this era of basketball is, and it's really like jacking up shots as quickly as you possibly can. No perimeter defending or limited perimeter defending, contact behind the perimeter, that kind of thing. I mean, he's excelled in it. I can't begrudge him for it. and I like Steph Curry. I just feel like, I don't know. It's impressive, but it's not when you compare it to like, you know, Russell Westbrook about to average his 4th triple-double, you know what I mean? For like things like that. I mean, we're just going to see crazier and crazier things like that happen. I mean, you got like Zion shooting 60% from the floor. It's just, I mean, that's just what the league has become. It's the no defense league, you know?
The only issue I have with the Russell Westbrook, because I think Russell Westbrook, if his name wasn't Russell Westbrook, I think he'd be the MVP, but I just don't think he's like likable enough. I don't think he's able to win another one. I don't know.
I think they hated giving him the one they did.
Exactly. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I think they hated doing that, and I don't think they'll like let it happen again. Because
I don't know why. Why do people not like it?
I don't know.
Because he competes. I mean, I don't get it.
I'm not really sure either, but I mean, he's just never been like a face or a star, really. And I think the league wants, you know, their stars to win these kind of awards. So,
well, and it's a perfect segue, and I'll have Nick go first on this one because he did mention it to me that he's a big Russell Westbrook fan. Russell Westbrook gets 15, 14, and 11 on the 17th against Detroit, gives him 171 career triple-doubles. He's 10 shy of Oscar Robertson, which obviously he's going to break as the all-time leader in triple-doubles. He's going to average a triple-double for the 4th season, and second place is 1, which is Oscar Robertson. You know, so I guess I don't know. Like you said, Nick, you said that he is completely, and Sully mentioned it too, but I wanted to get your take just because of where he's at. Like you said, if you had to speculate, why don't people like Russell Westbrook? I mean,
I think it's because of the level of talent he's played with too, and the hype around that level of talent. I think that probably goes into it because you have like a guy like, you know, he was tied to Kevin Durant for a period of time, and Durant came in with a lot of hype. And then he was tied to Harden when he went to Houston, and Harden was already like an MVP candidate all the time. And Westbrook is just still kind of sitting there averaging his triple doubles and putting up crazy stats. I think his playoff performances in the past have also kind of hurt him. Like he's not that great of a shooter, given how he plays, but I think that's okay. Like I think it doesn't limit his game really whatsoever because he can hit a shot. He will take a shot when he needs to. I don't know. I mean, to me, and when I said this to you, and it pains me to say it because I always felt for my entire life that it was going to be Allen Iverson for me as like the best player to never win a ring. And I think I think in my feeling now is it's got to be Russell Westbrook. And I love AI. Kobe loved AI. I love AI. No disrespect to AI whatsoever, but that's just how good I think Russell Westbrook is.
I mean, it's hard to argue. I mean, you look at his raw numbers, and I mean, like he's led the league in scoring twice. He's leading the league in assists this year, and he's led it twice before. I think his main issue is, you know, in like you know, Nick mentioned, you know, this is a shooter's league, and he shoots, you know, barely 30%, you know, from three, you know, for the career. So I think that's an issue, you know, I know his efficiency, you know, is a thing that people don't really love. You know, when you play that hard and play that fast, you're going to have turnovers, and things like that. But truthfully, I mean, I'm not really sure. That's my guess is the shooting, because he shoots, you know, like I said, 30% from three, and that's really just not good. You know, and then just the overall efficiency of his even like 2-point shooting and then turnovers as well, I think is probably what gets him the most hate, because other than that, I mean, it's really tough to argue with his game. He plays hard, he plays defense, he rebounds, he passes, he scores. I mean, it's really tough to hate on his game.
Well, and what I think it is, and you guys touched on it a little bit, I'm going to go a little bit deeper into it, is that we grew up in a different era. We watched a different era. Kobe Bryant was a guy who was going to leave his soul on the floor. And if you weren't leaving your soul on the floor, he was going to choke you in the locker room. You know, right. And Allen Iverson was that same person. Kevin Garnett was that same person. Russell Westbrook is that. He's a 95, 96, year player. And I think in a league where everyone's like, hey, let's clown around, let's joke, let's make faces at the camera, let's flex after we get a layup. And he's all business. And he goes 100 miles per hour, and he wants to win, and he doesn't want to clown around. And if you're not going to clown around, you're not going to tap dance for the press, then nobody's going to like you.
I think that's a great point. I think it's one of the reasons why Ja still doesn't get that same level of hype, is because he plays that exact same way. I mean, that was like who he idolized. It was Russell Westbrook. I mean, Ja always talks about that. But I just think that that's interesting that those players are frowned upon now. Whereas, to your point, Wayne, in the last few decades, those guys were like the rare breeds. They were the guys who the league was kind of built around, the AIs, the Kobe's. I mean, Jordan started that whole thing, right? You could say. But it is fascinating to me, even Reggie Miller to an extent. But it's like a guy like Reggie Miller would be hated in this NBA. I mean, Reggie would be hated. I mean, I think a guy like Ray Allen nowadays in his prime would be hated in the NBA. It's so weird, the shift. And I talked about like disarming. I know I give LeBron crap about it all the time, but that is like a thing. Like going up before tip-off, dabbing everybody up on the other time, dabbing up other superstars. It's a way to disarm them. Like, yeah, we're about to compete, we're about to go to war, but we're also friends, so, like, don't forget that. You know, like, save that shit for after the game. That's my opinion.
All right. Well, that leads us into the MVP talk. Like, we talked about it. Like, he's not going to be an MVP candidate. People just don't like him. We said Curry is not going to be an MVP candidate because his team's so bad. I mean, you just can't. We look at Wilt Chamberlain averaging 50 and 27 and finishing second in the MVP. Because it's just like your team's not great. You're not going to get there. So I was looking at who my top 5. I think Joel Embiid's got to be the favorite. I mean, he's averaging 30 points per game, 11 rebounds per game, only 3 assists. I think that's the only knock. So, like my number 2 guys, I have Jokic, but I think Embiid, especially with the Sixers being in first place, I think he's the front runner.
See, I think it's weird too. The NBA MVP is so weird now because I can't just say now, but it's just weird because. Like, why are we talking about a guy like Embiid where it's like the Sixers are a good team, right? Like, I mean, Joel Embiid obviously is a huge component of that. I'm not going to take that away from him. He's been exceptional. I mean, he's easily the best center in the league right now. And that's saying a lot considering Jokic is also like one of the best maybe all time as far as passing big men, right? But my whole thing is like, why don't we talk about a guy like Luka who no one could name Dallas's starting 5? Like, why don't we talk about a guy like Steph Curry because he's got Golden State in the playoff hunt, or Damian Lillard, who literally does not play with another all-star? It's like, why are those guys not prioritized over guys, like Embiid's playing with Ben Simmons, like Embiid has other talent on the team, whereas it's like, who are some of these other guys playing with? Why are they not prioritized more? That's my question on the NBA MVP.
I mean, I've always kind of felt that way. I don't think wins and losses should kind of be like measured as part of MVP.
Right.
Because, it's not the best player on the best team. That's not the award. The award is the most valuable player, like who matters the most to their team and things like that. So I agree with you. I mean, shoot, I'm always going to toot Luka's horn. I love the kid. So, I'll always go for him. I truly think, again, if Curry continues this run, I don't see how he doesn't at least get into contention. But yeah, it looks kind of to be Joel Embiid's award to lose at this moment. I mean, I think Giannis has the ability to get in there if he goes on a sick run, because he already had a really good run earlier in the season. So, and I think people would love to see him win more than they would a center. But again, it's just a tough year because LeBron's out, AD's out, Kawhi's not really playing, Steph started off pretty slow and his team's bad. All the biggest stars aren't really doing like that much. So,
yeah, I think it's a good point. I've watched a lot of basketball the last 2 years in particular. I've like really made an effort to try to get back into the NBA. And I will say this, I have not come across a single player who I would say, yeah, that person is definitively better than Luka Doncic. To me, every time Luka's on the basketball court, he's the best player on the court. I don't care who he's playing against or who he's up against. Well,
and I think that's the argument for MVP in any league, right, has always been, do we give it to the best player or do we give it to the guy who had the best season or do we give it to the guy who's most valuable to his team, like if you took him off that team? And each one's going to give you a different answer, right? So, like, if it's the most valuable to your team, it's Luka, right? Because you could take Embiid off of, the Sixers and they'd still be a playoff team.
Right.
But if you're doing the best player in the league, well, then I think it's Giannis. I mean, again, what's he doing this year that he didn't do last year? He's averaging 28, 11, and 6, and he's a defensive first team, all NBA first team. But if you're looking at, who's having the best season, I think it's Joel Embiid at the 30 points per game. And he's on the first place team. So it's kind of like, how are you going to weigh it?
I agree. And that's why, truthfully, I mean, it needs to be a combination of all things but again, it's really just going to come down to a lot of the late season specialness, I think, is what it's going to come down to because nobody has kind of separated themselves. So if somebody goes on, like, if Curry does this same, or if Giannis goes like a run like this in the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks of the season, I think he'll end up being it or something like that.
and I'm a huge Embiid fan. I'm glad to see him healthy, and I'm glad to see him scoring 30 points per game.
Right.
I think I've said before that I think he is the most talented big man I've ever seen, and that includes Shaq and Hakeem and Ewing. I think Embiid's more talented than all of them. My whole thing with him is he's needed a kick in the ass, and it seems like somebody's giving him that this year. So.
Yeah, his health too. I mean,
yeah, exactly. Not being hurt with a bad injury all year has really helped him.
The best ability is availability.
Hey, that's my favorite quote of all time.
Mine's not a finger.
Mine's the best ability is availability. I say that far too often when I'm scouting prospects.
See.
Speaking of scouting, the Major League Baseball draft is going to be coming up this summer, and I was actually, you guys, again, I'm going to lead on you a little bit more because it's a baseball thing.
I don't know nothing about the baseball draft.
Well, so going into the season, everyone was like the two pitchers from Vanderbilt. Yeah, the two pitchers from Vanderbilt.
One guy who's about to get drafted in the baseball draft.
So the two pitchers from Vanderbilt were like the front runners to be like two of the top 5 picks, and you got Jack Leiter, who was on fire. He's 7-0 with a 0.55 ERA, a 5-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio. But they're saying that he's the second best prospect behind this kid, Jack Lawler. He's a shortstop from Texas. And I don't know. Jordan Lawler. Okay.
Yeah.
So Jordan, but I'm like, why wouldn't you take a college guy who's ready to he's going to do the Strasburg thing, right? He'll pitch 2 minor league games and he's a starter in your rotation.
Shortstop.
It depends on the team, right? Like if he goes to Pittsburgh, maybe. Baseball's weird because it also comes down to who is the agent for that player, right? Because I remember a few years ago, like Luke Hochevar was like the consensus number 1 pick, and he dropped to like in the teens because Boris was his agent and demanding a huge signing bonus for him. And people were like, whoa, pump the brakes. And now nobody even knows Luke Hochevar. So it's like, stuff like that happens with baseball all the time. I'm also not convinced that I think Leiter gets a lot of credit too, because obviously his numbers are phenomenal, but his lineage, like I think Kumar Rocker is probably a better pitching prospect in my opinion. He's 6'5", 250, throws upper 90s consistently, has a strikeout slider. I mean, those are all things that scouts look for in this Major League Baseball.
Also, I think most of the time you're going to rate a position prospect higher than a pitching prospect. Also, this Jordan Palmer kid, I say I don't know anybody. I actually do know him. He, the ceiling on him is I think much, much higher. And that's the beauty of getting a high school kid is like projection. You don't necessarily need to wait to see a college prospect. In baseball, you can kind of see a lot of things and how they're project. It's why, guys like Juan Soto get signed when they're 16 out of the Dominican Republic and, like things like that. Cause you can kind of see the progression, and where it will end up being. And again, I think a lot of people will agree with this. You'd fill a major league team with 9 shortstops if you could. So a kid who's a legit shortstop and can actually play the position is extremely important.
And here's a stat for you, Wayne, too, about the Major League Baseball draft, because I never put too much stock in it. But there's only been one other time in Major League Baseball history where you've had 2 pitchers from the same college rotation go in the top 10. Do you know who those 2 pitchers are?
Ooh, how long ago?
Very recent.
Same college.
Let me give you an idea. They're both in the major leagues right now. Mm-hmm. Probably within the last 5 to 7 years. They're both legitimate big leaguers. You'll know both names.
I would have no idea. I don't know.
Is it Casey Mize and
Trevor Bauer and Garrett Cole went to UCLA together, and Bauer was drafted 3rd and Garrett Cole was drafted 7th. And you're going to have probably a situation where Leiter goes 2 and Rocker goes within the top 5. So that should be the second time. I saw that stat today. I figured I'd bring it up.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I did read when I was reading about Lawler. They said that Lawler, yeah, you look at his game and they say pick out one part of his game, whatever it is, hitting for power, whatever it is. One part of his game, they said he does it exactly like a Hall of Fame shortstop. Like he does something like A-Rod, he does something like Jeter, he does something like Nomar, whatever. Like he has a little.
I love that you said Hall of Fame shortstop and you threw Nomar.
Yeah, I know. I love Brandon on the show.
Yeah. No, I love that. I'm a big Nomar guy. I always have been. So.
Well, Brandon had him, I think, as his best
number 5 of all time over Mickey Mantle, over Albert Pujols.
I love that.
DiMaggio.
That's the Ted Williams. That's the Ted Williams thing. Ted Williams said Nomar's the best hitter he's ever seen.
Yes.
He was senile at that point, but
Yeah, he was, full of dementia at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent segue into Ted Williams because you did a great job with the segues. But no, so with Ted Williams, I'd always said that he was the most overrated baseball player of all time. And a lot of it has to do with the overrated hitter even, because I live in the Boston area and all you hear about is Ted Williams is the greatest hitter of all time. You can't go anywhere in New England without hearing Ted Williams is the greatest hitter of all time. And I've always said Babe Ruth is the greatest hitter of all time because he hit 2/100ths of a point behind Ted Williams. So he's right there. He has the best the best OPS of all time. And he's got 700 home runs. He's got 200 more home runs than Williams. He's got everything's better, right? But then I started doing some research. So this is where I'm going to just kind of walk it back a little bit, not all the way. But when I projected the 5 years that Ted Williams missed because of the two wars, and I just give him 30 home runs and 130 RBIs, which is like his fifth or sixth best season, because it was in his prime when he missed those seasons. He would have the fifth most RBIs of all time. No, I'm sorry, the first most RBIs of all time, the fifth most hits, and the fifth most home runs, including steroid era guys. So I'm like, maybe he was a pretty good hitter.
And he would still have the highest on base percentage of all time.
Yeah, second highest OPS.
Yeah, so I mean, I've always been a big Ted Williams fan. We've discussed who we think the best hitters of all time are. Behind the scenes. I think the top four are pretty kind of etched, in my opinion, with Bonds, Trout, Ruth, and Williams. Beyond that, you can argue the order. I think you can argue where you have them, and then I think 5 is where it gets kind of. Do you have, a guy like Mantle? Do you have a guy like Musial? Do you have a guy like Albert Pujols? Do you have a guy like Griffey? I don't know, where you want to go at 5. But I think anybody you have at 5, I don't think has an argument to be in the top 4. So I think that's where I'd kind of draw my line with the tiers there. But I mean, Teddy Ballgame was a hell of a player. I think it'd be, I never really understood your kind of hate on him. But I don't think he's in the Babe Ruth, Barry Bonds, Mike Trout tier because of those 3 years. But I mean, it sucks because he missed those 3 years. But I don't know.
I think the thing with Ted Williams that was always impressive to me, and I know I just joked about this with his whole Nomar assessment, but he did have an eye for a hitter. I mean, he saw Mike Piazza playing a Little League game at 14 years old and literally walked over to Mike Piazza's parents and said, your kid's going to be a Major League Baseball player. And I mean, it's things like that. I mean, he was a real student of hitting, right? I mean, he studied hitting, he studied different hitters, and you have guys that rightfully so obsess about different pitchers and the pitches they're going to throw, things like that. I mean, he sort of he came up with that whole concept about you get one pitch per at bat to hit, and you better hit it, right? It's just, I mean, he dissected hitting and perfected it as much as humanly possible. I mean, they still implement practices as hitters today that were kind of brought on by Ted Williams. I don't know. I think his impact on hitting, his legacy for hitting etches him into that top 5 for me. I don't think he's the greatest ever, right? I've conceded recently that it's got to be Barry Bonds. I hate that, but I have conceded that it'd be tough to talk me off that argument.
I agree. What's crazy too, if you look at his baseball reference page, the amount of black, which means he was leading the league at the end of the season, he led the league that season, is absolutely insane for Ted Williams. The whole thing's black. It's wild.
Yeah. One is I liked because Ted Williams was notoriously too kind of a dink, and he was not the most likable guy, and so that gives him some great quotes as well, which is why I like Zlatan, right? It's because of the great quotes. And so with Ted Williams, I think one of the ones I read is way back in the day. When we talk about the shift today, they used to shift on Ted Williams to the the right side of the field, and I think somebody had asked him, they're like, "Why don't you just learn how to hit opposite field?" He said, I can hit opposite field, but I don't because they can put 9 guys over there and they still can't stop me from getting a hit.
Yeah. Teddy Ballgame had a bunch of good quotes. Not Yogi Berra-esque. I was a big Yogi Berra quote guy. Hit them where they ain't, Yeah.
Ringo Starr of baseball.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a great analogy. I've actually never heard that before. That's pretty good, though.
So that is kind of the baseball segment. Getting into football, the story that piqued my interest today, only because somebody texted me during breakfast. One of my friends, John Alberton, so shout out to him. He said, hey, what do you think about this Jordan Love to the Patriots rumor? And I was like, what are you talking about? I haven't heard any rumor like that. And so I just go into Google and I type in Jordan Love, and like the first 5 stories are this guy taking a screenshot, supposedly, of a Green Bay executive's desk, and on it they had a trade laid out where the Patriots would give up number 15 to Green Bay, who would send back Jordan Love and number 29. And I thought, well, as a Patriots fan, I'll take it because they're probably going to trade back anyway, so why not get a quarterback and a pick?
I don't think they're trading back. I think they're trading up. But, I mean, again, the only thing that I struggle to believe in this is that's usually like, okay, that could just be written from Green Bay's side of, hey, this is what we're thinking. You know, like New England may have nothing to do with this. You know what I mean? New England may have never gotten a phone call. They have no idea. Maybe it's probably Green Bay's may propose this once like a player's there at 15 or something like that. You know, so it's tough to know if this holds any water. I've also haven't heard anything since then, really, from any of the big draft nicks that there is any validity to this. But I think it'd be interesting. I don't hate the idea. I think that the Patriots are going to make a strong push for Justin Fields if he gets past San Francisco at 3. I think they're going to try to give up quite a bit to get there. They were heavy at his pro day, so I'm assuming that's kind of who they're keen on right now. So we shall see.
Yeah, I feel like I haven't seen Jordan Love play football in a really long time. Doesn't it feel like it's been a really long time since I saw Jordan Love?
Since he was at Nevada throwing a record interceptions for a quarterback.
Yep.
You know, I just think it's it feels like forever. It really wasn't that long ago. But I also think it goes away. It kind of deviates from like the whole Green Bay model that they've really kind of, you know, built around Aaron Rodgers, really. But now it's the Green Bay model where it's like you have a guy sit under the tutelage of an all-pro quarterback, and then you slowly integrate them into the system, into the sort of idea. I know I didn't get to touch on the whole Patriots quarterback thing. You guys talked about Mac Jones last week, and I saw this crazy thing. I don't know if either one of you saw it, but I saw this theory that Belichick leveraged his relationship with Saban to have Mac Jones kind of underperform so that he would drop into the Patriots' lap. I mean, because there were some throws that Mac Jones –
Well, they were bad.
Yeah, I mean, his pro day, it seemed like –
his pro day.
Right. He didn't look great, but some folks had speculated that was planned. And would we put it behind Bill Belichick to do something like that?
I wouldn't put
leverage
it.
You know what I mean? Like,
how do you convince a kid? But the difference between getting paid, because the rookie wage scale is paid is based on where you get picked. So, like, you got to now convince a kid to throw his thing and not get paid possibly how much a third overall pick gets paid to then 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, wherever he ends up going. That's millions of dollars.
Yeah. I don't disagree. I don't disagree with that at all. I just thought that it was an interesting perspective. And it also, to your point, Sully, he's a kid. So what's to stop Bill Belichick from saying, hey, man, we'll make up all that revenue by putting you in a winning formula right now, and you'll make it up with marketing. You'll be in a massive market with a dedicated, loyal fan base, all that sort of stuff. I just thought that was an interesting take, and everybody on the planet knows Nick Saban and Bill Belichick are like
friends.
Close. You know what I mean? Like they are tight. So I wouldn't put it past them. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. I don't think Jordan Love's going to New England, Wayne. Long story short. But the Mac Jones thing was interesting to me.
I don't think it fits either. I don't really love Jordan Love in New England's offense.
Sully Jordan hates it.
Yeah.
He doesn't Jordan love it. He Jordan hates it.
I do. I Jordan hate it.
Yeah.
But I also, like, truthfully, I'm really kind of, like, uber convinced they trade up to, like, 7, I think. I think then with Detroit makes a little bit of sense. Jump ahead of Carolina, who could possibly still be in the market. However, there's a lot of talk now that Carolina's trying to trade back as well. Teams trying to jump ahead of Denver because Denver's most likely going to grab a quarterback. But so it'll be interesting to see. Again, the whole draft, we're going to talk about it, I'm sure, ad nauseum, is going to depend at number 3. It's what does San Francisco actually do? Do they take Mac Jones? Do they take Justin Fields? They were heavy. They had a lot of execs at Trey Lance's pro day yesterday. And apparently he did extremely well, which is no shock. He's going to look great in shorts. So, maybe Trey Lance goes there. I don't know. So it's going to be a hell of a draft.
Yeah, we've got a mock draft coming up on Tuesday, and hopefully I can get that right up. Maybe we'll even do it live. We'll talk about that. Maybe we'll even do a live.
I'm down to do it live. Don't tempt me with a good time.
But so Mel Kiper and Todd McShay came out with their 3-round mock draft where they take turns alternating who they pick, and they're saying this is who I would pick, not who I think they're going to pick.
Not who they think they're going to pick,
which is stupid to me. But I wrote down some of the notable names, and obviously the first two pretty much locked in stone, right? So really got interesting. Like you said, the first domino to fall is going to be San Francisco. Who do they go with? Now, all the rumors have been Mac Jones is the guy. Like San Francisco traded up specifically to get Mac Jones. It wasn't to get one of these quarterbacks. It was to get him in particular. But Todd McShay has them taking Justin Fields.
That's where I think they're going to go. I think it's all just kind of a ploy, truthfully. I think they're holding it close to the chest. But at this point, I don't know why. But, you never know. I would take Justin Fields. I would not take Mac Jones. There's nothing that Mac Jones does better, in my opinion. Maybe he assesses a little better. I don't know how good he is on a whiteboard and in a meeting room. But, I mean, just tools-wise and then actually, seeing it, I don't know. I think Justin Fields does it extremely well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who San Francisco is going to take, honestly, because Mac Jones fits Kyle Shanahan.
But so does Fields.
Fields. I just have such a hard time with Fields because he was so average after the fluff schedule wore off in the Big Ten. He was just so average. And you're talking about Mac Jones, a guy who completed 80% of his passes for the most part. It's I realize the talent around him, it's hard. Yeah. The talent,
but it's not like Ohio State's offense was no slouch. So
right, that's what
he's got two first-round receivers next year coming out, and Chris Olave and I can't remember the other kid's name. So he had weapons too. So I agree.
And the Big Ten was just garbage last year. Penn State was garbage. Michigan was, a laughingstock. Penn State, for as bad as they were, Michigan was the joke of the conference. So it's you talk about that.
Indiana and Northwestern.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Fields
and those were his two worst games.
Yeah, Fields struggled against those guys. It's just I don't see it. He's a tough kid. I get it. You guys know how I feel about Ohio State quarterbacks. I think they're a gamble regardless. So it's I don't know. It just doesn't make sense at San Francisco. It makes sense because of his projections, where he would go in most mock drafts, but I don't know. You're right. It'll be interesting to see who San Fran takes. Wayne,
that's the giant question mark.
Yeah.
What's that?
I was going to say, Wayne, what do they have at number 4?
They have the Falcons taking Kyle Pitts, and then they have the one that surprised me is they have the Cincinnati Bengals taking Penei Sewell at number 5. And I only say it surprised me because we've been saying Penei Sewell for half a year now, going to Cincinnati. Yeah. It makes all the sense in the world. Joe Burrow was getting buried last year before he got hurt. But recently, again, reports, and I know there's a lot of smoke screens that come out this time, but it was they're going to try to pair him with Jamar Chase. That's his buddy. Either going to bring him in there. He's a superstar receiver to give him somebody to throw to. But what I think it was McShay or Kiper, I can't remember who picked Penei Sewell here for Cincinnati. They said, well, you can't throw to anybody from your back.
Yep.
Yeah.
I guess there's two schools of thought. Is Jamar Chase is going to get open quicker, so you won't need as much time, and therefore you can complete a pass. Or Penei Sewell allows more time for your receivers to get open. I think it's going to be easier to find a second-round receiver or third-round receiver to match production, whereas it's going to be much more difficult to find another Penei Sewell. I don't really care if I just spend a ton of money on Riley Reif. I don't think that affects anything. You could slot Jonah into guard, Jonah Williams into guard and put Penei Sewell at left tackle, or leave Jonah Williams at guard and Penei Sewell can play tackle. Or leave Jonah Williams at tackle and Penei Sewell can play guard. It's really not going to matter. More good offensive linemen don't hurt. The only issue, though, is going to be Joe Burrow's sway in this. There's reports that he has say in what this pick is going to be. And if he does, I would think he wants a weapon more than he wants protection. But I could be wrong. I would want my guy that I broke records with at LSU, personally, if he's on the board and he's available. That's where I would want to go. Also, in this mock, didn't Miami trade up to number 4?
Not in this one.
Are you sure?
In this one, they stay at 6 and they take Jamar Chase.
Okay.
I'll say is Miami taking
Jamar Chase.
Chase.
I think they want Pitts, but I think if Atlanta takes Pitts, then they go with Jamar Chase.
I think everybody should want Pitts.
Should want Kyle Pitts, yeah.
I think everybody.
Miami's, I think, in the best situation in the draft. Truthfully, if they don't get Jamar Chase, they can take Devontae Smith or Penei Sewell, whichever one they want. And, I mean, I don't think they miss out there. I think they don't mind taking Devontae Smith just because of kind of what else they have. I think Devontae Parker and Will Fuller, allowed Devontae Smith to kind of be a Justin Jefferson kind of fly under the radar, but then produce extremely well. Excuse me.
What if you have a scenario where you have San Francisco grab Pitts instead of a quarterback and then just roll? Can you imagine with Kittle and Pitts? Can you imagine? I was just throwing that out there. That's just.
You got to think Jimmy G's got a ton of. I mean, the only issue with that is the amount of capital they gave up.
We lost you.
They got you on mute here.
Okay, we can hear you now. Yeah. We can hear you now.
Yes, that's the crazy thing. Is not how he pairs with Kittle. The crazy thing is they gave up 3 first-round picks to get Kyle.
Right. Yeah, no, I get it. I was just throwing that out there. I mean, because all of a sudden now it's like that's a hell of an offense.
Yeah, that's tough to stop, especially with Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk too. It's like holy shit.
Yeah, that's a scary offense. Anyway, I just muddying the waters here, Wayne. Sorry.
No, that's fine. So this is in this mock draft. They have the Patriots trading up to 7 with Detroit to take Mac Jones after Fields goes. I mean, I know, Saul, you said you think they will trade. Do you think they trade up as high as 7? Or
I think they're going to have to. Because all right, so here's the way I personally think execs think is okay. I think they have an idea who's going 1 and 2, and honestly, I think most NFL execs have an idea of who's going 3 as well. They don't have to get to 4 because 5 and 6 aren't moving, in my opinion. I don't think the Bengals are moving down, and I don't think the Dolphins are moving down in any way, unless you offer them the absolute house. I don't think they're moving down. Maybe Denver, if Denver has the ability to give up 9 for next year's first, things like that, maybe. Otherwise, they're not moving because they're going to get a blue chipper, and that's what's going to help their ball club. So 7's really the first spot you move up to. Now, you have to worry about Denver at 9. Then you also got to worry about teams like Washington and Chicago in the 20s that could very well mortgage their future to come up and get one of these top 5 guys. So in my opinion, you're going to have to move up. If you identify one of the guys as your guy, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Mac Jones, whichever one it is that you think is going to be there. If you identify him as your guy, you got to move up to get him, in my opinion. And New England's in the perfect spot. They've got a roster loaded with talent and still have some pretty decent cap space to make another move or two if they want to. Go get a rookie contract quarterback and build this team how you're the kind of blueprint for how you're supposed to now.
Yeah, I can see New England. I mean, I can see New England trading up to grab some, I don't know, stud defensive player, to be honest with you, like a corner or something like that, and then just grabbing Kellen Mond late. Like, I mean, there's such a hard team to predict. I mean, New England's so difficult. I mean, half the time you get like Belichick's dog behind the laptop. So I mean, you never even know.
It is very true. They're very difficult to predict, and I mean, a corner makes a ton of sense because honestly, like in my mock, I've got them trying to move Stephon Gilmore and to pick,
right,
to move up, so they don't have to lose a ton of draft capital. Instead of next year's first, I got them doing a second Stephon Gilmore and their first and 15 to move up to 7. So
I was looking at some of the other names. They do have Trey Lance going to Denver. Jalen Waddle going to Philadelphia at 12, which I think would be a good get for them, trading all the way back to 12 and still getting him because they need a wide receiver.
I think they knew that was going to happen. I think that was smart for them. They're going to get a receiver or a corner there. I think they like.
And then at 15, Micah Parsons finally going where the Patriots traded out of. Detroit takes Micah Parsons at 15.
What about the Cowboys? Who they have the Cowboys going in this one?
Patrick Surtain.
Patrick Surtain, I believe.
Always. That's the only pick for the Cowboys. It's Patrick Surtain or J.C. Horn. Usually they need a corner so bad, and I just think it'd be cool to pair up Patrick Surtain and then Trayvon Diggs. They were in the same corner room last year at Alabama, so that'd be cool.
The interesting thing I saw here, so they had Jacksonville at 25 taking Kadarius Toney at wide receiver, so giving another weapon, and then with their first pick in the second round taking Travis Etienne. I'm like, wouldn't that be good to get Trevor Lawrence, Toney, and Etienne in the first 3 picks? Can you
imagine? They already have James Robinson. I mean, I mean, Jacksonville could be building something special. Their defense is not bad. Like they're not. They're like a probably middle of the pack defense right now. But I mean, you add a couple pieces to it. Jacksonville could be good, man. Trevor Lawrence could come in and just be dynamite. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we had a discussion on over Facebook with Brandon Combs because he's firm in the corner that Trevor Lawrence is going to be a bust. And, I've always said it's very easy to say that, but it's very difficult to give reasons why. One of the big reasons why, might just be situation. It may just be very difficult for him to succeed. Urban Meyer is an unproven college coach. He's a very proven college coach, but he's an unproven NFL head coach who's a college guy who doesn't have any, pedigree in the NFL and very well may not be able to run an offense in the NFL. We don't know. So he's going to be very dependent on the success of Urban Meyer, obviously, and the schemes of Urban Meyer. But, his talent's going to be out of this world, obviously. We know he can throw the ball. I'd love to see him fill the talent on offense like they have. I'm not a big Kadarius Toney fan right there. Personally, I'd rather have Rondell Moore. But I like getting him a playmaker there. The big one, I think, is Pittsburgh taking a running back at 26. I hate that pick. Or 23, right?
24.
24. God, I hate that pick. Who
do they take?
Najee Harris.
Najee Harris, yeah.
Which I just can't stand. For one, I'm in firm belief you shouldn't take a running back in the top 50. Beyond that, I don't think.
Whoa, even if it's Saquon? Even if it's Saquon or McCaffrey?
Yeah, even if it's Saquon. Look at the
hindsight, though. You can't think injury. I think hindsight.
Well, it doesn't matter hindsight. They're not going to effectively give you what you want, and you're only going to have them for 4 years because then to sign them to a big contract to running back to make, $15, $16, $17 million is a negative for your ball club, in my opinion. But they have huge issues along the offensive line and at cornerback and at pass rusher. And to waste a first round pick on a running back, I think would just be a travesty.
And most of these mock drafts I've been looking at, and this one was no different, has Rondell Moore going like mid to late second round. Mm-hmm. And I know you were saying that this guy's a super talent. He didn't play a lot of games, right? But
he's so small, though.
He's 5'8". I think he's 5'8", 5'7". But he has 42-inch vertical, 4'3",
but he's
4'2", but he's built like a rock, dude. He's built like a rock.
It's not the height, though. It's like the fact that he weighs like I think he weighed like 175 pounds on his measurement. He is small, man.
That's how much Tyreek Hill weighed. So that's how much Devontae Smith weighs, and he's 4 inches taller.
Yeah, T. Higgins.
Yeah, So you don't look at Rondell Moore and think that's a small guy. You think he's short, but you're not like that's a small guy in stature wise. And I think that's what's going to make him succeed. Do I think he can ever succeed on the outside? Absolutely not. No. But as a slot guy, getting like use him as maybe like a Darren Sproles out of the backfield a little, things like that. A guy that explosive and that dangerous with the ball in his hands, especially in this league where you can run the amount of jet sweeps that they're running now too. He's built for this kind of league and those jet sweeps. I'm a huge fan. He measured in 3 inches shorter than he was listed. So that's always, and we already thought he was listed short. So
when we talked about Gregory Rousseau being kind of like a lottery pick of sorts, and this draft they have him going 56, I think it is, to Seattle. But the one that I really liked was right after him at 57. They have Baltimore taking Carlos Basham. I thought, Baltimore would be so perfect for him. Huh?
He would. He's a great fit, especially in that like hybrid 3-4-4-3. Gregory Rousseau had probably the worst pro day you could have as an offensive line. Outside of his length and size,
but that's going to bode well. That's going to bode well for some team because we know Rousseau's better than what his pro day is. So someone's going to luck out.
You hope. He had one season where he played extremely well his redshirt freshman season. Then he sat out his redshirt sophomore season, and we haven't seen anything since. He's extremely – but all these guys – so here's the take on pass rusher 1 through pass rusher 7. Extremely raw, athletic, toolsy guy. That literally describes every single one of them. And I don't think a lot separates them. And that's why you don't want to be the first guy to take an edge in this class. Because Kwity Paye or Jason Owe at 23 or 24, I don't think offers you a ton more than Gregory Rousseau at 54. I don't think there's much of a difference in the guy you're getting there. So
I don't even know. Does Owe project to be a defensive?
He's listed as edge.
He's listed as edge. That's how I just list guys as edges. I don't care if you're a 4-3 D end or a 3-4 outside linebacker. If you're a pass rusher from the outside, I label you as the same thing. So I mean, I think that's where they'll all end up. So yeah.
Next guy, Pat Fremuth, tight end, goes to
so late.
Yeah, Tennessee at 85.
There's no way
that's a steal.
That's a huge steal. There's no way Pat Freeman would last that long. There's just no way.
He was projected. He was like consensus best tight end in the nation going into it, and then Pitts came out of nowhere. It was not even a human being, and Pitts came from like a different planet. And then, but I can't. Someone's going to get a steal because he blocks, he catches. I mean, he's good separation, great separation. Yeah, he literally. He's old school tight end, reliable as hell. He's going to have a long career in the NFL.
That's the comp I have for him. He's Jason Witten. He's never going to maybe a little less receiving. I don't think he's never going to be George Kittle and lead the league in receiving or anything like that. But he can get you 55 catches for 800 yards and then also be a force in the run game. So,
my favorite player in the draft goes 86. Wyatt Davis goes to the Jets.
Which is, I mean, for one, incredible pick for the Jets. I have him going much higher than that. I have him going around where he has Quinn Moretz going, which I think is the top of the third. I could be wrong. But, I have Wyatt Davis as my number 2 guard. So I have him going much higher. But, yeah, I mean, for the Jets pick in general, yeah, I mean, that's incredible. That's what they need, too. Boost that O-line, get Zach Wilson in there. Oh, boy.
How about Sean Wade goes 87 to Pittsburgh? I mean, is he really excited? I thought this is cornerback university, Ohio State, right?
I mean, he just can't play on the outside. He got exposed. He looked so bad this year. So he played inside corner his entire college career, mostly because, he was stuck behind Jeff Okudah and then Damon Arnett. You know what I mean? So you're not really playing at that point because you've got those two studs out there. So he was playing on the inside and looked like, he's had the pedigree of, oh, man, this guy's just another one. He's going to be a stud. You put him outside, and, God, he played bad. I mean, bad. Most teams, truthfully, I don't even have him on my corner board anymore. I have him as a move to safety. Or like the down in the box kind of slot corner guy, something like that. If you leave him outside, he's going to get in a lot of trouble, man. You're going to get burnt. He does not.
Wayne, do you have the full list in front of you for the first, second, and third round?
No, not the full list. I went just like guys who I thought were interesting.
Who are you
looking for? Who do they have Kansas City taking for the first? I want to know who are KC's picks. I'm just curious because I have no idea what that draft strategy looks like.
I can pull it up real quick.
I looked at it earlier today and I just didn't think of it. And then I listened to something later on this afternoon. It was like this evening actually, where they were talking about like most likely to repeat the Super Bowl and like what KC needed to do to get back to the Super Bowl. And I was just curious what their draft strategy is because it's like, do you give more weapons to Mahomes?
So they got Landon Dickerson in the first, who's outside of Rashawn Slater can play center, but Landon Dickerson's the best center in the draft. Yeah. And then in the second round, they've got Malcolm Kuntz, an outside linebacker, kind of pass rusher, who I don't hate. If you're adding edge, I think you're always in the good. And then who else do they have here? Another tackle, Larry Borum, who
they're focused on protecting Mahomes.
Yeah,
protecting the franchise. That's what
which makes sense. Usually, I'd prefer they go tackle in the first round over Landon Dickerson or somebody like that. Yeah. But because I love the tackle class this year. So
now the thing that did strike me is, and maybe I missed it, but in the 3-round mock draft, I didn't see Kellen Mond, Jamie Newman, or Kyle Trask.
Neither did I. Which there's no way possible in the world that doesn't happen. They all go very early, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I think Kellen Mond.
Second round, you'd think Trask would be a guy that goes like round 2. I mean, Mond, you'd think round 3.
Mond and Davis Mills is the guy that I think is going to sneak back into the first or the ass end of the first, top of the second. The kid from Stanford, he'll be the 6th quarterback taken, in my opinion. And then beyond that, it'll be Mond or Trask, whoever like you kind of love. I think Jamie Newman is going to fall to the 4th, but again, quarterbacks get pressed, so you never know. But after Mond, I think there is kind of a gap. It depends how you feel about Trask. A lot of teams don't love him. So, I don't think you want to be the guy that, like, if you're Washington or Chicago and you don't make the move up for one of the top 5 into the top 10, I don't think I'd take Trask in the second. I think I'd wait to the third, and if he falls, fine. Or I'd take Jamie Newman in the third, something like that, because I don't think he offers much more for the second round value.
Yeah, everything I've been reading and watching has been Kellen Mond looks amazing. Like he looks like he should be a lot higher than the second round.
They're saying
he's a lot of inconsistency. I mean, but
they're saying pro ready
towards. Yeah, he's shooting. Yeah. Well, he's got a lot of tape, and he has what you like look for in progression. So he's gotten better at things he wasn't good at every year. And when a player does that, a coach looks at that and says, okay, I can work with that. He also has raw talent and an exceptional arm. He's now I can see he has the ability to learn and progress. Let me invest in this kid and see what I can do. The issue is not like elite level of play. Now he still was the quarterback of a top 5 team in the best division of football this year. So I mean that's hard to do, and that's a great thing. So, but we shall see. I think he's going to go pretty high. I wouldn't expect him to get out of the top 50 picks, in my opinion.
Well, so my question would be for you this then, because I'm all about value, right? And if you're the Patriots, right,
my whole thing better is to move up.
Well, because as I was going to say, if whoever you draft is going to sit a year anyways, then why not?
Because again, it's at that point it's ceiling, and Justin Fields projects as a top 5 quarterback in the NFL.
Mac Jones or Kellen Mond.
Well, I mean, at that point, you're not going to like Mac because I don't really love Mac Jones. I have Mac Jones as probably the 25th or 30th best player in this draft. So, I mean, I don't really think he's that great.
Which is probably fair, but he's a
Fields
quarterback.
Goes 3.
Yeah. If Fields goes, that's what if Fields goes 3, I don't know either because at this point, I'd jump all over Trey Lance too. I think Trey Lance has. I've got a ton of knocks on the kid. I've always said it. I said, he hasn't shown me enough to label him as one of the best quarterbacks in this draft. But at 7, 8, or 9, and I don't really got to give up that much. Give me Trey Lance 100 times out of 100 over Kellen Mond, because he has the same physical tools, just projects to be, elite. Whereas Kellen Mond has a lot of these physical tools, but I don't think he's ever going to be a guy that you're like, okay, that's a top 5 quarterback in the league. Now, again, if you can move back and get, 3 first-rounders, well, sure, that makes it worth it. You know what I mean? But if you're moving back from, 15 to 20, and because you didn't move up, I think that's your issue. If you sat there to wait and it didn't work out, then I think that's your problem. Move up and get your guy.
Yeah, I'm just thinking again. If you sit at 15 and Micah Parsons happens to fall at 15, then I'd take that. I mean, that's not a loss.
Yeah, it is but it is though because what a quarterback brings to a franchise is infinitely more than what a linebacker does. So one Trey Lance is worth more theoretically than Micah Parsons and Kellen Mond. He just is. Now that may not it is it's a giant projection, but in the projection world of it all, Trey Lance is worth more. Now it depends obviously on what you have to give up, but in the long run, let's put it this way: if all players hit their absolute best, Trey Lance is better than getting Micah Parsons and Kellen Mond at their absolute best. Because Trey Lance wins you Super Bowls, and Micah Parsons and Kellen Mond maybe don't, because even Kellen Mond at his absolute best is going to need a lot of help around it.
All right. Well, those are our thoughts. We'll go more in depth, I guess, when we do our mock draft.
Oh, for sure. It's going to get naughty next week. We're going to get deep.
Hopefully, if you followed us to the end, I didn't do it at the beginning, even though I thought I was going to. Please follow us on Facebook at Infinity Sports Podcast, on Instagram at Infinity Sports Podcast, and on Twitter at Sports Infinity 5. Check out YouTube. We break this into segments. Whatever your favorite segment was, go on. You can just watch that if you want. I'll have some highlight videos on there. It's a pretty cool looking professional layout that I put out there. But otherwise, since it's Nick's first show back, he wants to throw it to Kenny.
Kenny, take us to the NBA playoffs with John Moran.
Oh, please. God, I wish we could skip right to the playoffs. Wish we had 2 weeks and then playoffs.